Welcome everybody to JOHS WICOR Bites, where each week we review a different WICOR instructional strategy to help you maximize student learning. Today we're going to feature the classic Think, Pair, Share strategy along with a few variations that any teacher can incorporate into their instruction. With this being our first WICOR Bite, let's take a second to define what we mean by WICOR. WICOR is a framework that encompasses a collection of teaching and learning strategies that guide students in comprehending concepts and articulating ideas at increasingly complex levels. WICOR itself is an acronym. It stands for Writing, Inquiry, Collaboration, Organization, and Reading. And you'll see each WICOR strategy featured in the WICOR Bite series utilize a combination of these elements to enhance student learning. WICOR strategies are compiled and endorsed by AVID, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to close the opportunity gap by helping students who are traditionally underrepresented in higher education. With that said, let's start our discussion about today's strategy, Think, Pair, Share, along with a few variations. What is Think, Pair, Share? Simply put, Think, Pair, Share is a core cooperative learning strategy in which students think through a question individually, discuss with a partner, and then share ideas with the whole class. When would a teacher use Think, Pair, Share? Really, anytime throughout a lesson when students need to critically process information or re-engage with the material is a good time to incorporate Think, Pair, Share. And perhaps most importantly, why would you want to use Think, Pair, Share? Well, research shows that students often need between 20 seconds and 2 minutes to think about questions that require analysis, synthesis, or other higher order learning outcomes. Think, Pair, Share guarantees this processing time while providing an opportunity for all students to participate and respond to a question, rather than just a single student being called on by the teacher. Please take a second to pause, reflect, and discuss these questions with your colleagues. Have you ever used Think, Pair, Share? And if so, how and how often have you implemented it? Let's break down the strategy into distinct steps for implementation. The first step offers guidance and preparation. You'll want to try scripting one or more thought-provoking, high-level questions prior to delivering your instruction, and then have the question available for students visually by typing it into your presentation slides or writing the question on the board. You may want to consider adding an icon or a Think, Pair, Share template to your slides as a signal to yourself to use the strategy while teaching. That way, you won't fall into any old routines or questioning habits with your students. As a pro tip, to get your students used to talking and sharing with one another, try having students practice the strategy using a fun, low-stakes question first. The next step is to provide students with thinking time. You'll pose the question to students and have the question available visually for students to reference if they need. Provide at least 30 seconds of wait time and encourage students to jot down thoughts and ideas in their notes. You can clarify expectations during this step by explaining how you'll know students are thinking. For example, you could say, during our think time, I'll know you're thinking when I see you jotting notes or sitting silently. A couple of pro tips for this step would be to model what it sounds like to think through a complex question with a teacher think aloud, and to use a timer to ensure that you provide adequate think time. Next comes the time to pair students for discussion. Ask students to pair up with a partner and share their thoughts and perspectives with one another. You may want to explicitly tell students which partner should begin the conversation. For example, you could say, the oldest group member will share first, or you could establish partner A's and partner B's, and then direct one or the other to begin. A pro tip for this section would be to use accountable talk stems to facilitate a more meaningful dialogue with students. Check out the Think, Pair, Share starter pack attached to my last email to see some of those stems. Finally, call on student pairs to share their thoughts with the whole class. I will say before you do this, it's helpful to have practiced your routine or to have a signal for getting the class to end their partner discussions, even if it's as simple as something like raising your hand. You can try one of these question phrasings when you call on students to create accountability and to lower the stakes for elected speakers. So take a second to read those. For a pro tip, let reluctant speakers or English learners know ahead of time that you plan to call on them to share with the whole class, perhaps even during the students' partner discussions. That way, they can rehearse what they'd like to say. All right, as promised, here are a few variations on the classic think, pair, share. When you want students to write independently before sharing, you can do a write, pair, share, in which you ask students to respond to a quick write before discussing with a partner and sharing with the whole group. Want students to have authentic conversation before writing independently, you can plug writing in after the partner discussion, having students write a summary of their conclusions before sharing with the whole class. There are a few additional variations for when you want students to write independently or have authentic conversation depending on your lesson design. You can do a think, pair, square, where instead of a whole class discussion, 2 pairs of participants work together to share and compare responses. To incorporate movement, try out back-to-back and face-to-face, where students stand with their backs turned with a partner and then think about a question independently before turning and sharing with their partner. You can do a silent think, pair, share, where students write down their thoughts and exchange those with the partner, kind of like an academic version of passing notes when we were kids. Finally, there's value in doing a straightforward turn and talk to allow students to process information verbally before sharing with the whole class. Of course, what kind of a literacy coach would I be if I didn't include a few ideas for using writing to extend and assess student thinking? As previously mentioned, you can turn the think portion into a quick write for a write, pair, share, or add a written reflection at the end for a think, pair, share, write. You can expand the original question into a full writing prompt to assess student understanding and facilitate the synthesis of information from the whole group discussion. And finally, you can change the format of the question from the original think, pair, share activity to another type of high-level constructed response question. The example here turns an analysis question into an application question, with the think, pair, share discussion preparing students for the final, more challenging cognitive task. Some supports for multilingual learners here from the great Dr. Marlowe Cross. One support would be to assign partner roles for students to help facilitate the pairing and sharing that will be going on. You'll consider the proficiency levels for each role too. You may want to have a beginner student ask a question first or restate what their partner said and then provide sentence stems for each partner role as seen below. Next, it can be helpful to teach body norms when doing a think, pair, share with multilingual learners. Explicitly teach what it looks like to engage in partner work or discussions. Show pictures of how partners or groups engage and draw attention to norms such as facing one another, eye contact, nodding, and physical space between partners. Another support would be to provide a word bank with your target academic words you want to hear students using. Of course, include visuals and/or cognates to the word bank as needed. And finally, for brainstorming or for questions intended to activate prior knowledge, it's helpful to allow students to share ideas in their home language. But note, it's still good practice to encourage English language production with linguistic supports, such as sentence stems, for all other types of questions beyond brainstorming or activating prior knowledge. Okay, before we wrap up, you'll notice QR codes to the right that connect you with the Microsoft Bookings links for me and our other wonderful coaches at Overton. So just follow those or send us an email if you'd like some support using Think, Pair, Share or any of the strategies covered in our WICOR Bites. For our Bridge to Practice today, I'll let your content lead or other facilitator take it from here. Basically, you're going to practice a Think, Pair, Share using one of the 2 questions below. All right, thanks everybody. I'll see you next time.